problem of balance. Over the years, I've seen a lot of English learners. And one problem that I often see is a lack of balance. What I mean is, students often focus mostly on grammar and test preparation and not communication, right? In fact, recently I surveyed 58 learners, and most learners spent 50 to 70% of their time on grammar study. That was what they did in high school. And over half of them in high school spent 70% of their time not doing communication. There's a thumbs up for some reason on the video thing. I don't know why, which is actually should be this, right? And most commonly, this is the worst thing of all, they spent only about 10% of their time in communication or practicing communication, which is, of course, the purpose of language study. So these learners definitely lost their balance. So what? Why should we care? Well, hyperfocus on grammar and test prep is a problem because it's boring and because people lose motivation. Maybe they hate learning English now because basically they think English language learning is grammar study and test prep. And of course, when we do mostly grammar study and test prep, it lacks meaning and it lacks effectiveness. And so we fail to focus on the purpose of language, which is communication. I am Joseph Polshock, PhD, aka Dr. Shock. My PhD is in linguistics from the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, and Scotland is great. I have over 25 years teaching experience teaching English learners how to learn English, and over 10 years experience teaching English teachers how to teach English. And this talk is separate from my work at Senshu University, where I am a professor in the School of International Communication. If you like this video, please like and subscribe and share it with others. And if you don't like it, for goodness sakes, give me some feedback so I can make it better. So let's talk about balanced learning. You've probably heard me talk about this many times. Here we go again. Balanced learning. So why should we balance our language learning? Well, when we balance our study, we boost all aspects of our language powers. Notice that I didn't say language skills. I like language powers because language is really a human superpower, right? And when we balance our language learning study, we enjoy more, we understand more, and I believe that we remember more. And most of all, we focus on the purpose of language, which is communication. Now, when we think about balance, there's an old kind of balance, which I think is not ideal, and this is kind of an out of balance thing, right? So old balance means that people study listening, reading, speaking, and writing, the 4 skills, grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. And of course, all of these are important skills, but they are often done without communication. Let me give you an example, right? So here's a typical speaking dialogue. The girl says, "What does Mary like to do?" And the guy says, "She likes to play tennis." The problem is there is no Mary. She doesn't exist. And she doesn't play tennis because it's an imaginary person, right? So this is not real communication. Another example, and this is the most famous or the worst one of all, the teacher says, "Repeat after me, this is a pen." And it's almost like the students are saying, "Yo, teacher, we know it's a pen. Why are you telling us?" So again, he's telling the students something they already know. It's not really communication. And so old balance is often not ideal. On the other hand, Paul Nation, in his Four Strands, gives us what I think is an ideal form of balanced language learning. And what are the 4 strands? They are: 1, getting meaningful and enjoyable and interesting, I often say storyful input. Second one is producing meaningful, valuable output. Valuable means I care about it, it's important to me, I want to tell people about it, I want to write you and say something about this output, right? And then we practice speed and fluency, and then automaticity, being able to use the language fluently in communication. And then lastly, there's a focus on language rules and form, grammar and structure, etc. So I believe balance is important. In fact, I practice balance every day. This is me in my favorite yoga pose, right? So balance is important. And so here's a theory for balancing language learning and teaching. This comes from Paul Nation's Four Strands, and here it goes. We best acquire language by balancing meaningful input, meaningful output, fluency practice, and language-focused study. So how do we do it? Take a look. Well, getting meaningful input, getting enjoyable input, getting storyful input. 1, you can read lots of helpful, easy, enjoyable messages and stories, following what I call the 98% rule, which is based on research, meaning that you know 98% of the words in that text. This means you can read it for pleasure, and that's good. That's important. The 98% rule is based on research. If you know 98% of the words in a text, you can guess unknown words from context. Another way to get meaningful, enjoyable, storyful input is to listen to helpful, easy, enjoyable messages. And with listening, I often recommend using the 100% rule. Listening is a little bit harder than reading because you can't see the text. So if you know 100% of the words, the listening will help you. You'll be able to understand everything a little bit better. You can experiment with that, but I think 100% is probably a pretty good guideline. All right. You can also get meaningful, enjoyable, storyful input by watching dramas. Step 1 would be to watch the drama with your L1 subtitles. That's your first language subtitles. And then watch again, this time with the L2 subtitles. That is your second language subtitles, in this case English. And then the third time, you can watch it with no subtitles. You might want to go for a whole season with your first language subtitles, and then a whole season with the English subtitles, and then a whole season with no subtitles. One famous story is the leader of the Korean K-pop band BTS. The leader of that band did this technique using the drama Friends. And they're only 20 minutes long. They're well made. So it's a great way to get meaningful, enjoyable, and storyful input. Here's another silly example, which I think some of you might like. You can cook delicious foods using an English recipe book. So you're reading the recipe in English and making food with it. That would be a way to get meaningful, enjoyable, and interesting input. What about producing meaningful output that you care about, that's important to you, right? Well, write a diary. Writing a diary is a very healthy thing to do for every human being. So write a diary and write answers to things like, what am I grateful for? What went well this past week? What went well yesterday? What went well today? And then what can I do better? So you can write a diary in English like that. You can also regularly visit or video chat with your English-speaking friends. It's easy to do that. Everybody's connected these days. Or you can write business or personal messages to colleagues or friends, little messages, maybe texting or emailing people. And then you can also talk with AI about a favorite place that you have visited or want to visit. Recently, I've been having conversations with my AI in Spanish about a place in Spain where I studied for a while. And it was pretty interesting to have that conversation with AI. The AI knew a lot about the place that I had visited. All right, now let's look at practicing fluency, practice natural speed, fluency, and automaticity. This is called the 4-3-2 activity. So you can do a short speech. First, time yourself and do it in 4 minutes, and then in 3 minutes, and then in 2 minutes. Same speech, but each time do it in a shorter period of time. You can also do a speed reading course using easy texts, quizzes, and a timer. And you can also read a text for 1 minute aloud, and then read that same text again for 1 minute, and then ask yourself, how many more words did you read the second time? So again, you read the same text twice, but the second time you probably will read more in the same 1 minute, and so you can count how many more words you read the second time. And then the last one is you could listen to a YouTube video at a slower speed, like 0.75 speed, and then normal speed, and then speed it up. And that would be one way to practice listening fluency. Or you could sing a song slowly and then sing it faster. Notice that all of these techniques in the fluency activity are dealing with interesting messages and something that's meaningful. So you're getting meaningful input and output as well as you practice real fluency with a timer. Okay, so these are some great ways to practice natural speed, fluency, and automaticity. And lastly, you can focus on language rules, form, and structure. So you can read a text and highlight all the verbs in the text. So read a text and then highlight all the verbs or circle all the verbs. Or you can read that same text and highlight all the word endings. So you're noticing the word endings. Or you could look through the text and highlight or circle all the adjectives or all of the adverbs. So you're focusing on language in a text that might be interesting and meaningful to you, and that helps you pay attention attention to grammar. You can also write coworkers or friends, and then when you write them, you can say, please give me 1 point of feedback on my English. You're not going to ask them to correct everything in your letter or your email or your text, but ask them to give you 1 point of feedback. Did you see anything that I could improve in my text or email? Right? You can also have your device speak words for you that you don't know and repeat the pronunciation. Actually, pronunciation is a grammar. It's a grammar of sound. So you want to you can have your device speak the text for you, and it can teach you pronunciation. And lastly, you can make word cards for words that you don't know, put them in your pocket, shuffle them, and do retrieval in the free moments that you have for where you can study for a minute. All right, so there's some ways to practice the 4 strands that are very practical. The key point here is to balance your study, get meaningful, enjoyable, storyful input. All right, produce meaningful, valuable output that you care about, that interests you. Practice speed, fluency, and automaticity. Focus on language rules maybe 20 to 25% of the time. And then with balance, you'll enjoy learning more and improve faster. I am Joseph Polshock, aka Dr. Shock. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. I am a language coach at languagesuperpowers.com and a content creator at readoasis.com. Thank you so much for watching.